Hello, good morning everyone. How are you today? I want to welcome you to our session on greening of industry, waste, efficiency. We will look beyond that as well, what municipalities have done. We've got an excellent lineup of 5 very promising speakers. And I will try and make it as interactive as possible. So I've asked all the speakers and the contributors, we will have 3 PowerPoint presentations. And we have 2 of the contributors sharing without PowerPoints. I will try and make it as interactive as possible. And we will kick off with a presentation that I think will have some polar, potentially controversial components to it. You know, it's good to stir things up at the beginning, and I've asked my good friend Pavel Čech to kick things off. You know, we met, I think, 4 years ago at a green technology conference, and I still remember he was representing the cement industry in those days. And you know, I've always been a little bit, hey, the guys from the cement industry, they're burning the limestone, the carbon sink, they're releasing the carbon dioxide. And I co-founded a company in Germany which basically does cement replacement. And I myself have experienced how difficult it is to compete in a market with the big boys that are controlling the industry. So we started off kind of, you know, hey, this guy, you know. But then when he got started talking about waste, industrial ecology, refuse-derived fuel, we became good friends. And I realized, wow, this guy knows his stuff. And he's actually really keen to kind of do the right things from an environmental perspective. So today is really about giving you an overview, giving case studies, asking the question, what works, where is the return on investment? Ultimately, when we look at waste, when we look at resource efficiency, when we look at greening of industry, the real issue is, where is there money to be made? If there is money to be made, then it will happen. So that will be one of our key themes. I always like to turn waste into everyday things. I think those of you who attended the plenary already saw my bag made of waste material. You might have seen my pencil case, you know, the things that we throw away every day. Simple upcycling turns it into the most eco-friendly, zero carbon footprint, because we didn't need to melt anything, we didn't need to apply any electricity or any other chemical processes to turn it into a new product. We just needed to cut it open, put a zip onto it, and here we go, a totally new product. So I would like to ask Pavel to kick off his presentation. And I want to do a very brief hard talk kind of interview with him after his presentation to distill out some of the, you know, key points and really identify, especially waste to wealth, what is realistic and what is not. So Pavel, he is the Managing Director of ResourceCo Southeast Asia. His HQ is based in Singapore. So the floor is yours, Pavel.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank ADB for having organized this first Greening Summit and for having invited me. Thank you, Matthias, for your kind words. Could you just remind me of how much time we have? 20, huh? All right, we will need to run through those 37 or how many slides, but first of all, I have to tell you, I'm a sinner. And being here next to Matthias, I feel a little bit like an outcast because I use shampoo and I drive a car. So apologies for that. Take it as a disclaimer here, and then we can run with the slides. Since okay, monitor is there. So fantastic. I don't need to ask anyone. Brief introduction, what is ResourceCo, and this is not a sales speech. So we are a resource recovery company founded more than 20 years ago in Australia. We concentrate on mineral and combustible materials derived out of waste and used in either as a fuel or as a raw material. We produce a lot of artificial aggregates, but artificial means recycled concrete crushed into aggregates up to a specification and used for not really structural, but for concrete, like parking lots and so on, sidewalks. We produce a lot of alternative fuels out of non-recyclable combustible waste. The primary industry we concentrate on is cement industry because of the advantages of co-processing in a cement kiln. And we also produce a huge quantity of tire-derived fuel made out of used tires and export it to Asia. Our primary markets are Japan and South Korea, so sophisticated customers. We don't burn it in the rainforest of Cambodia, for example. We will run quickly through the picture, what waste management looks like in Asia, what are the game changers, and where the need is to play a bit with a smarter game in the waste management. We will look at the common misinterpretations, because in our business there's a lot of nonsense going on, and people take nonsense very often as something very promising and hang to it until the last moment, until it's late. I'll show you a few business cases, and then we will do a bit of soul search if time allows. So quickly, Asia. We can divide Asia into developing and developed countries, but they have got one thing in common. This is the life cycle of our products. It's not a cycle at all, it's a line which starts with mineral extraction and which ends up in a grave or in a crematorium called incinerator plant, very often dressed up in under the sexy name of waste to energy. So this is the sad reality of Asia, and if you hear otherwise, I think you should sift through the information you would get, because this is really what's happening here. Developed countries have got relatively attractive disposal fees, but very often do not have the real appropriate recycling infrastructure or political willingness. Therefore, waste gets commingled, and the common denominator of developed countries is the high value of land. Therefore, they don't want to landfill, and they try to burn stuff. So incineration is very often the common solution. If you look at Hong Kong, for example, or Singapore, those are the typical examples. Developing countries have, first of all, very high tolerance to dumping stuff, legally or illegally. The place which I love and where I live is Malaysia. There's more than 200 landfills and dump sites, but only very few comply with any environmental standards. Landfilling cost is very cheap there, therefore it does not provide for much of pre-processing or sophisticated waste management methods. We could run through all the other features of developing countries, but these are probably the two main ones. Also, enforcement of law and regulations is relatively weak. So this is where we are in developing countries if we are very lucky, meaning landfills or managed dump sites. This is the daily reality in many countries, and we don't need to only look at Malaysia. You would find it almost everywhere. People just dump and burn everything right at the outskirts of their townships or kampongs or barangays or whatever we would call it. This is also the daily reality. You go to a beautiful island with beautiful beaches, but you get all this stuff which has been thrown into a river or into the sea and which has been washed up on the beach. So enjoy your holidays and be happy. This is our reality. So from the line which you saw as on the first or second slide, we should turn it into a cycle. And again, this is circular economy and industrial ecology concept is nothing new. It's just not being very much put into reality. We love talking about that at conferences and forums, reading papers and making even more scientific papers. just clapping our hands, but we don't do much to get there. Why is it so? So here are a few ideas about what the game changers should be or could be to make the cycle a reality. First of all, I would like to use the sandwich analogy. We are in the Philippines. Filipinos love eating at least 5 times a day, and they really love their food. And therefore the sandwich here, basically, you can make a very tasty sandwich, but you have to stick to certain strict way of making it. Sandwich without a bread would probably not be a sandwich, and if you put nothing in between the 2 pieces of bread, it would also probably infect negatively the taste. So how to make a nice sandwich? It is clear. Resource recovery is sandwiched between 2 customers. One customer is the generator of the waste, the polluter, who has got the responsibility to take care of the waste, and then the customer for the recovered product. Because if you collect the waste for free, then spend money to recover it, and then give away the product for free, you will die of hunger because it will not pay your bills. So here is the concept of actually any value added requires value to be really thrown in and extracted from the 2 customers on each side of the sandwich. Then few basic things that I have highlighted in red for each category, what could give a business opportunity. So polluter, there needs to be segregation of waste at source, because commingled wastes cost a lot of money and creates a lot of value loss throughout the value chain. Regulators should have systemic solutions, not allowing only piecemeal, but having a concept, and that's very often missing. Transboundary market does not exist for recovered products or for many of recovered products. And the transboundary market could create a few $1 billion per year economy if we do it right, and if few countries in ASEAN get simply harmonized on their legislative framework. And then waste management, effective solutions within a realistic value chain. Basically, again, money, money, money. Money is needed there. This is something what everyone knows. I just would like to emphasize on one fact. Without having a green design, without having a product that has been designed and produced with environment on the mind of those who were at the cradle of the product, we will have a problem in the future. So for recovery and for recycling, we need a proper design of any product we have. So technology. Technology is a magic thing, and everyone believes in technology, yes, but we have proven concepts already in our hands, and it's just about implementing them. Don't wait for the future technology, because the future never comes. Future is a running target. Developing versus developed world, here you see what I mentioned before. Here is a systemic solution, one of many, what could work very well. Again, let me emphasize on the need for segregation. At least dry and wet waste will do a big difference, and here is the difference, here is the money. If we segregate, we would probably save, depending on the country, $10 to $40 per ton of waste, because this is the money which you would need to put into the value chain to clean up the waste. Here is co-processing solution. I will not spend much time on speaking about that. Here are a few examples of products which could become commodities derived out of waste, if we are smart and if we have proper regulations. Now, Matthias, excuse me for taking too long, but I guess this is very important, the common misinterpretations. Waste to wealth. If we don't pay for proper solution, we will get a polluting solution. Without money, no honey, as I have heard last night. Basically, we have to understand that proper waste management costs a lot of money, and the money has to come from somewhere. Don't ask the governments will not give you usually the money, so it needs to be the polluter. So we are back to the polluter who, to sustain his lifestyle, needs to generate waste, and who's responsible for the cost of managing it. this says what I have said before. Waste to energy, I have mentioned briefly before. Green commodity trading, couple of $billion market, few business cases. This shows that things work. TDF is globally traded commodity. A company called Tire Cycle has been exporting to sophisticated clients more than 180,000 tons of tire-derived fuel. Very well established, yet some Asian countries are still reluctant to accept that. Philippines, EcoEdge, 40,000 tons of RDF derived here in this city, in Pasig, out of municipal waste for cement industry. Hazardous waste in India being co-processed very often, but again, money, people do not want to pay, they like throwing it into the river. Even in Pakistan, Lahore compost and RDF production, it worked very well, and it's still in operation. ResourceCo Asia in Malaysia, I will skip it because I would be accused of advertising our own company. So, conclusions and soul searching. There is a massive dormant market which we need to tap into and which can create a great opportunity for businesses. Governments need to be involved to unlock that market through harmonized regulations. Technologies are available. We don't need to wait. We just need to implement those which have been proven. Green business costs money, so the money has to come from somewhere, which is the polluter. Don't believe in cheap solutions. Everything what's a cheap solution in waste management is a dirty solution unless you do your work. Segregation at source is the most important part of there because it saves a lot of money. So to get from where we are to where we can be with a product derived out of waste and freely trade it, there's a long way to go, and I don't know whether we are the problem or whether we are the solution. I think it's a combination, but there's an opportunity for everyone as long as we push the same direction. Thank you very much, that's all.
Thank you, Pavel. You've overstretched your time a little bit, so I'll just ask you one question before I invite the others on stage. I remember a classic moment where you were discussing with this Malaysian guy who had just been told by the government people, we are going to make the waste available for you, and he was supposed to be investing a couple of million US dollars into a processing plant. What advice were you giving him?
This talk has not been prepared, so I've been caught a little bit off my guards. But my advice to him was make sure that you have proper backing from the government and that you get, first of all, access to the waste, because in that country it's quite well regulated, and basically you have concessionaires who take care of all the waste. And second thing is make sure that you know what you're doing, because the landfilling lobby is very strong and will not be very happy about you getting involved in any upcycling or recovery of material.
I think one other thing you mentioned, you knew of a guy that had a similar proposition in Singapore, and he had invested a couple of million, and all of that went to waste because the waste stream that was supposed to be guaranteed, there were problems with collection, with separation, and the raw material was never available, so it was a write-off, correct?
That was a case of food waste collection and anaerobic digestion. And you know, very smart investor, great technology, but they forgot one thing. They forgot that they could not get the waste at the right and consistent composition they needed. So even the government, even NEA, spent some money on that. They built that, and yeah, I think in less than 2 years they had to dismantle everything, write it off, and to move on, because it did not work. So you have to know your waste stream, you have to know how to collect that. And we had a discussion with one of the participants yesterday, because it's not only about having the technology and being in love with your technology. It's not only about seeing the product, but it's also about the supply chain, which very often can cripple the whole project.
Just one quick thing, the case study that you mentioned about Pakistan, you didn't have the time to go into it, but that's a fascinating one because the site was set up with carbon credits in mind. A couple of years ago, it was funded by a donor bank or donor body, but when the site was operational, the price of carbon credits was down on the floor. The place was not financially viable until the refuse-derived fuel collection and the selling it in an industrial cycle to a cement plant came in and made the thing, prevented the thing from going into receivership, correct?
Absolutely. So the carbon credit dropped for that company from 24 euro to 7. So immediately they started leaking a lot of money and losing the game. And RDF actually saved them because it offered a viable option for their refuse from the compost manufacturing process, and it gave them a revenue stream. So yeah, it was a great example of how a symbiotic relationship can exist and how systemic solutions actually can provide a better outcome for everyone.
Great, thanks for the interesting kickoff. I would like to ask the whole panel to join me now. Ladies first, Tatiana Gallego-Lison, the director here of the Urban and Water Division at the Southeast Asian Department at ADB. I think your seat is over there. Then we've got Anthony Hallock. Most of you know him already from yesterday, from the panel. He comes from the University of Queensland. He is the systems guy. Then we have Puan Sri Maimon from the Malaysian Mosaic Sider and Berhad. She is a member of the board there, a director. She will really look at a company case study. And then last but not least, we have Tamal Sarkar, the director of foundation for the MSME clusters in India. He was already active the day before at the marketplace and networking session looking at the SMEs. So we have a very distinguished panel here. I would like to continue the conversation. Puan Sri, I have come across your case study as well in Malaysia a couple of months ago when I was a speaker at the Malaysian Federation of Manufacturing on the Environmental Day, and I was very impressed with how you have been able to focus on zero waste and waste minimization within your operations in Malaysia. What was the trigger for that?
Okay. Hello. We are in the ceramic tiles industry. If you know the ceramic tiles industry, yeah, we are a sinner also, like you say. Because we use raw materials from the earth, that is clay. We use lots of water, and we are an energy guzzler. What takes nature millions of years to produce granite and marble, we can produce that within a day. So we emulate nature, but we do it faster. So when we built our plant in the 60s, we've been in existence for more than 50 years. Our plant is located in Kluang Johor, where there is hardly any water for industrial use. This is in the 60s, when Singapore was still part of Malaysia then. So what do? So you need to be innovative. So we look at it more really, where do we get our water? So we started rainwater harvesting. It was not the in thing then, but that is the value that has been inbuilt as in the company. That we look at things from a very, very business approach. Over the years, then we have built this culture of going into zero waste through really our people, empowering our people. Because you can put technology out there, but if the people do not appreciate and understand technology, they will waste. So really working through the people, those are the low-hanging fruits, and empowering them, and making sure they have the tool set, and making sure that we invest in them, and making sure that the tone from the top is consistent, and providing that ecosystem for your people to allow them to fail, be forgiving in failures, because if you are not forgiving in failures, they will not be innovative. And at the end of the day, it's really data driven. A supervisor in the plant understands what is his impact to the bottom line. But getting that information is not good enough. For them, now we've gone to that extent that if they know what is their impact to the bottom line, they also know what's in it for them. Because as you rightly pointed out, it's where is the money? So we have already linked waste, cost to their incentive. So they know exactly what is their impact to the bottom line and what does that translate to their pocket. So that to me is the most powerful.
So if they help reducing waste, becoming more energy efficient, they will actually see a higher salary?
They will get their incentive. Because at the beginning of the year, they will be the one who will commit to the management what kind of cost saving they will make at the end of the year. And with that cost saving, how the management will negotiate how much of it will go to the pocket.
Okay, that's good. And I think it links in nicely with what we heard yesterday from Tata. It needs to be a business case. It needs to be about leadership, about culture, and it needs to be quantified and linked back to people's job and related incentives. So I think that's a very, very good framework. You know, often we hear, oh, going green in business costs a lot of money. That's maybe the pollution control and end of pipe type compliance thing. But if we make it an internal improvement culture, so how much money have you saved over the years with this strategy?
When we first started working on this, the first year was really an eye-opener for everyone. It took us 2 years to really work through getting the data, getting the training. We don't see anything the first year. After the second year, we saw 20 million ringgit savings.
Wow. That's about, the ringgit has gone, plunged significantly. So 20 million is about $4 million US dollars, $5 million US dollars, right? That is significant money.
Well, that was the first year. And because there was a lot of low-hanging fruits then. But now we link it more to, because in Malaysia now, the government has taken off, has started reducing the subsidy of fuel, and the raw material cost has gone up because of the ringgit has gone down south. But what has been fascinating was we have been tracking our unit costs, and unit costs have been standing still.
That's good. Excellent. So the business case has been delivered and the overall environmental impact has been significantly reduced. Great case study. Now, what about India, Tamal? Is it there with your work with SMEs? Have you had a similar experience that small companies could actually increase their financial performance through going green, or was it a costly exercise?
Thank you. I think I came with a belief that only small companies are looking for immediate gains. But I'm going back with a belief that it is the profit motive is universal. Be it small or be it big, every company is looking for something out of green. So here also in SMEs where we work, that was the main criteria. So we approached them with two things. One is occupational health and safety, another is greening the environment. So they told us to prove which one gives money. And we said, okay, the greening thing gives money. So that was the start off. So I think we worked with something around 500 or 600 SMEs in that particular area, and uh, they probably saved around €2.5 million in a 2 years' time. But the investment, incidentally, was very low. I think that's the key for SMEs because there is no long run in SME. There is no medium run also. There is only one run, and that is a short run or a very short run. So what they basically need is basically immediate returns. And if there is something which cannot get immediate returns, it cannot see the light of the day. It can have a very good welcome and etc., but it will not happen. So therefore, with a very low investment, very high savings, that is the target. And believe me, there is enough scope for that in the SME sector. But one thing which is also important in the SMEs is the number. It's not 50,000, it's 50 million. So only in India. And probably if you take Southeast Asia, the developing, it may be 70 million or 80 million. And 95 to 99% of them are micro. And how do you reach them? 95% of India is not, 90% of Indian SMEs are not registered. So how do you reach them? As the technology of reaching them is through a cluster approach. And the technology of reaching them is through the industry association approach, the local, small industry associations approach, and involving them with the success. And then only, that's a way that we can move forward.
Great. I was just wondering, Tamal, whether you could give us some specific examples how this cluster approach, either through aggregating and getting scale, or through, the opportunity to have different companies work together, help with actual waste minimization and energy efficiency.
Okay, so I will take the case. We worked in 5 areas, basically, foundry, rubber, textile dyeing, plastics, and transformers. But this was the case of foundry I will take because foundries are there in all over India, 5,000 or 6,000 of them, and concentrated in 3 places. So we took one of the concentrated places, and that's in the northern side of India. And first step was to demonstrate that it works. And while demonstrating, it is very important that we take ownership. That SMEs, I will not say SME, I say the M of the MSME, that the micro, 99% in India, their major issue is that they cannot afford to take risk. And if anything goes wrong, who pays for it? So we confirm that it is that the program will stand by them and will do that. And then although we went wrong in some way, but ultimately we came through in few successful cases. And once the success comes, that's the time when you involve the industry associations. The industry associations has to be convinced. And then they should become the torchbearer of the concept and go, because they enjoy, industry associations are the best friend of SMEs. So they already enjoy our trust. So it's just like multi-products running on the same trust lanes. So we just put your product on that trust lane, and it gets pushed into the place where there is this thing. And once it is there, then once the people get the benefits, then it's a time to do some trading. Like, for example, okay, you are doing this. What about promoting occupational health and safety because you are saving? Right now, SMEs in India are very labor shortage. And so therefore, it's also a game. It's also a business. If you want to have your labor repeated, because most of 95% are casual laborers. So if you have to get your labor repeated with the same level of experience, you need to attract that labor, although a casual, into a semi-permanency. And that can be done through occupational health and safety. So occupational health and safety also became a major issue. But one of the major problems of doing this thing is appropriate availability of service providers. I think India would, there are around 1,500 clusters of in India which are SMEs and 3,500 which are handicraft or handlooms. But if you take the 1,500 only, in that 1,500 there are scope for at least 150,000 service providers. We worked in 10 clusters. We could not find even 20. So we are less by 80 to 90%. Now that is a big gap which needs to be somehow breached. Thank you.
I remember that a couple of years ago I was involved here in the Philippines in a project. We had a large company that wanted to engage their supply chain. And the small guys, they were very scared that the regulators would come in through the back door. Oh, you guys are doing this. Oh, you're not complying here, you're not complying there. You need to pay a bit of money here, pay a bit of money there. So initially those small companies were very reluctant until we told them, no, this is the big boy wanting to help you to save money. Reduce your waste and improve your resource efficiency. I still remember it very well. And our good friend Eric over there, he was a service provider that actually focused exactly on the energy saving, the waste minimization, because if we don't give SMEs return on investment immediately, they are gone. They're gone. So that's really the key. But even for large organizations. So I think greening of industry, maybe one key output we have already is we need to deliver ROI very fast. We need to lock it into the business strategy. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. Otherwise, it's only a short-term initiative. Now, I would like to ask Anthony to give us his big picture presentation on the circular economy as the next step to basically look at the big picture. What are the macro trends there? What have some countries done that have moved into circular economy legislative frameworks? And then we will subsequently hear from Tatiana what are some of the waste minimization initiatives the ADB has been involved in. And then we'll wrap up and engage with you guys in Q&A and an exciting discussion. What can we take forward from this session? Anthony, the floor is yours. As you know, 10 minutes is my limit for you.
Okay.
Keep it sharp.
All right. Firstly, thanks ADB for inviting me. As we have heard, I would like to echo that it's very important to green the supply chain or to create what we call a sustainable value chains and networks. And also to echo the youth agenda. As an academic, it is important for me to educate the next generation of business leaders, policymakers, scientists, and engineers, such that they will become more collaborative, more system thinkers, and they are able to understand the interconnectedness of different issues with respect to UN SDG goals. So let me try this. So as we all know, there is really an unavoidable coupling of human and natural systems. And it's not really a critic there that I highlighted about China. China has extensively used resources, and there are a lot of emissions to air, water, to land. But what is very important there is China has shifted really towards circularity, and they have ratified what we call a circular economy promotion law, which is very interesting, and hopefully the whole world will also emulate China. And besides China, as a whole, the Asia-Pacific region is also increasing their what we call solid waste there. So it's not only China needs to enhance actually, or to move towards what we call circularity, but hopefully the whole many countries in the Asia-Pacific region will also move towards what we call circularity. So there is really a big call, what we call shifting towards circular economy paradigm, so that we can work in conjunction with this 17 UN SDG goals, as well as this, what we call the Paris Agreement, and really in support of COP22. So there are already a lot, as you've seen there are a lot of frameworks, there are a lot of philosophy, procedures, and tools that we can use. And green economy and circular economy, these are actually philosophy that we can borrow. And there are frameworks there where you can see the cradle to cradle, the shared values. These are frameworks that we can follow, but there are also tools that are already in existence actually in many industries. You can see there the environmental life cycle assessment, you see the eco-design. But what is common across all of this concept is the idea, the notion of system thinking approach. It's very important, and if you have read a lot of reports with relevant sustainable development, system-based approach is very important. And this has been discussed already by Fabel, so I won't go into the details, but just to highlight to you that there are already existing business practices, waste management policies that you can implement or even operationalize at a system level. So before I proceed, I would like to show you a short video clip on rethinking the progress via circular economy so that you can understand the basics of circular economy. Please.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
So hopefully you get the basics of actually of circular economy, and hopefully you appreciate that there is a need for interconnectedness. So please return to this slide, please. So there are a lot of projects that we are doing actually in Australia, and as soon we have applied the concept of circular economy to the agri-food, to the mobile phones, to biofuels, and so on, even in the energy production in Indonesia. So if you're going to compare the current linear-based economy system versus the circular economy system, you would see there in the Impact 2030, and if we work this in conjunction with UN SDG goals, we have seen that we can double actually the overall benefits there. And we can also have a leapfrogging reduction in emissions as well as increasing actually our resource consumptions. So this is a circular economy. So it is like the biological materials there and the technical materials here. But the main point here is that the tighter the loop, the higher is the value. So therefore, in the technical materials there, you should focus first on the repair and the maintenance. But in the biological aspect, you should focus on the biochemical materials. That is why in Australia, we focus on scaling up these biochemicals, bioproducts production, because for the purpose of really having the most value out of it. And because like green economy, we would also like to look on the different obstacles. And what is pointed out, if we can move towards niche and mainstreaming steps, the main point there is that when we go to our mainstreaming steps, we also have to really look on the true value. And I would like to echo that it's really important to find the true value, whether with respect to the natural capital or even actually redesigning the whole supply chain. And this is more. I think hopefully you can read that in your free time. And finally, we have applied actually the idea of circular green economy actually, and we have this 10-year biofuture plans in Australia, and we would like to mainstream. And all points that have been pointed out in the overview of the barriers and the niche and the mainstream, we have been applying this in the case of biofuels or large scaling up of the biorefinery system. And finally, because I don't have much time here, I just want to show you this, this diagram. Now, think about this. Regardless whether we are from developing countries or developed countries, we are all in this together. We cannot just finger pointing. We have to propose systemic solutions. We have to appreciate the interconnectedness. We have to pursue extensive collaboration among different stakeholders, from the government, from the private sector, from the youth, from the civil organization, as well as the household. Each of us has something to contribute. And hopefully we can think in system approach, not in quick fix, not in silo, not in linear, not in short term. And if we are really serious, damn serious in addressing sustainable development, we need to think in this way. Thanks all.
Thank you, Anthony. The big picture, not linear, but in a circle. We will get back to that later on when we do our Q&A and wrap-up discussion. Tatiana, por favor. She is the Director of Urban and Water Division at the South Asia Department in the ADB. She has a couple of very interesting examples within ADB projects where waste has been minimized and put to use. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Matthias. I just wanted to maybe provide a complementary view to some of the excellent examples that we've seen this morning. And that complementary view concerns maybe more the public sector, which needs to be on board as much as the private sector. So I'm just going to take you, since I'm mostly working on municipal services, and to a large extent this is where a lot of the waste is generated, and we'll see that in a minute. I'm just going to take you through a little trip of the main issues and some of the emerging examples that we're seeing and which ADB is supporting. So over the next 10 minutes, because I know it's tight, I'm just quickly going to take you through 3 or 4 items. Is the just a brief summary of the main urbanization challenges that we're facing now in the 21st century. We're then going to look at some of the areas where we can have opportunities in terms of municipal work for improving resource use and reducing waste. And after that, I'll move into some specific examples where ADB has been a proud partner of our member governments. So, oops, okay. This is meant to be played. Okay, great. Okay. Great, then I'll just speak. Okay, as most of us know, more than 1 billion people have been added to cities in between 1980 and 2010, and another 1.1 billion people are expected to join by 2040. That will make more than 60% of the population of of the world by 2040. There are many challenges that come with such a dense urbanization pack-up of population. First of all, there's a rise in demand for resources. Secondly, there is growing consumption patterns that come with better lives and more demanding lifestyles. There is also an increasing depletion of natural resources, as we just saw. And lastly, we have to accept that there is serious climate disruptions that are hitting us, and also more extreme weather events. So, as I said, many people move to cities in search of a better life. Economic growth is driven by cities, where 70 to 80% of the GDP of most countries is generated, but livability is compromised in many cases. First of all, cities occupy only 2% of the land around the world, but they they consume 75% of all resources, and they generate also similar numbers of waste. 80 of the 20th most polluted cities in the world are also in Asia. And thirdly, globally, cities account for more than 75% of the carbon dioxide that is generated, which compromise significantly the share of global greenhouse emissions that are made. We have a history of inadequate basic services and also environmental degradation. So, what is it that we can do? I think, number one, there is a need to systematically move towards a concept that makes judicious use and considers the recovery of water, energy, and land resources in any possible event. Opportunities for green infrastructure are also multifold, from construction to municipal services. And let me take you just through a few examples on these three items. Firstly, on city design and services, there are opportunities that come from compact development, but there are also needs. First of all, there needs to be climate-sensitive planning strategies, including smart densification and living street landscapes. There is a need to more efficiently manage the water cycle, to ensure that climate proofing is incorporated and that risk prevention and management is part of any city strategy. Secondly, when it comes to green and sustainable buildings, we need to consider that a significant fraction of the greenhouse emissions is actually generated in buildings in cities. A smart building is not just an energy efficient building, but it's also one that contributes positively to the environment and to the community in that city. What can we do? First of all, we can move on to promoting green building certification in many of our countries, and we can consider policies that incentivize this. Secondly, we can the development of low carbon policies which are driven by cities. And these may incorporate public transport, they may incorporate the recovery of waste, and so on and so forth. Thirdly, we need to look at strategies for sustainability that address conditions in informal settlements, which in many of our cities still make 30% or more of the population. Lastly, I wanted to quickly mention smart energy systems for cities because these are also rather important. And I wanted to emphasize that more intelligent, cleaner, and efficient energy systems are, for instance, those that are looking at decentralized energy networks, smart metering and real-time pricing, consider energy from waste, and are intelligent and efficient in the way that they deliver energy street lighting. Now, we don't have very much time, so I have just selected a few samples which mostly looked at basic services: water, wastewater, and solid waste management. So my first example brings me to Calcutta. And I just wanted to share with you that Calcutta, after many years of thinking about it, is making extreme efforts to reduce waste. Reduce waste in which way? Reduce waste in minimizing water leakage and water losses through the pipes. They have just awarded and are in the process of implementing the first phase of a performance-based management contract that is looking at NRW reduction and which will bring Calcutta's water in this first zone from about 60 to 70% losses, which is very high, to less than 20%. Calcutta will thereafter continue with several other zones, but they need to secure that this is done in a gradual manner. The next place that I'm taking you is Mangalore, which is a very interesting case. Mangalore, with the assistance of ADB, constructed 4 sewage treatment plants in 2009, if I'm correct, as well as the trunk main sewers and the collection system. Having constructed the STPs and having them fully running, they also considered what else they could use in terms of the discharge effluent, which nobody was going to utilize. Mangalore Special Economic Zone was short of water. So what happened is that a memorandum of agreement was signed in between the city, the Mangalore City Corporation, and the Mangalore Special Economic Zone. Thereafter, the construction of a pipeline of about 30 kilometers, a tertiary treatment plant of about 22 megaliters per day, and a distribution network within the special economic zone were constructed and now are fully operational and maintained. Next, I want to take you to Mandalay. Mandalay is in the process of constructing its first wastewater treatment plant, and they are very proud about it. Now, what they're even more proud about is that despite of the fact that this first sewage treatment plant is relatively simple in technology, it uses just a physical-chemical treatment, it actually has already a process of recovering the energy. So it has a biogas system that will be used to cogenerate electricity to run the plant, and has also put in place a system for collection of the sludge, which has been stabilized and will be disposed and used in, for manure with farmers, and also for with the cement industry. My third example brings me to Jaipur, and in this particular case, it's also a sewage treatment plant, which was the first one, I think, that ADB participated on, and that looks at methane capture. It's a 62.5 megaliters per day sewage treatment plant, which was completed in 2006, and which post-completion, it was decided that a system of, again, electricity cogeneration would turn the sludge, the digested sludge, into power to power the treatment plant itself. Last but not least, and we have a number of examples, but this was so impressive. It was not done by ADB's public sector, it was done by ADB's private sector, but it brings me to the People's Republic of China. And this is a fantastic solid waste management site that was given out as a concession to a firm called Everbright, and which not only segregates and recycles most of the materials on site, which are recyclable, it has over here, oh sorry, I keep on forgetting. Over here you have the landfill site, which was perfectly constructed with already intended collection of methane for introducing into the gas system. And then where these two gentlemen are standing at the moment, and I cannot show the picture, there is a waste-to-energy plant which uses the innards and basically those elements which are not recyclable and not compostable to be burned and generate electricity, which is thereafter put in the grid. We have a number of other examples that we've worked in solid waste management in the public sector. They are not as sophisticated, but I think they merit a lot of value, and they typically include composting, methane recovery, and segregation of recyclables. That's all for me. Thank you very much, and I hope that this perspective of the public sector was also complementary to what my colleagues presented.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. And I think especially the last example was an example of cycle economy, the ash being used for construction materials, even though I would kind of want to know, because usually waste to energy, you have heavy metals in the fly ash. How do you deal with the heavy metals as a building materials? In Germany, for example, there was a scandal 3 years ago. Roads had to be digged up because fly ash contaminated with heavy metals had been used. And so there are always these technical issues that might play a role, but I think great examples in terms of moving towards the circular economy and getting additional value from the waste in those big infrastructure projects, which are happening more and more. Puan Sri made a little, put a little bug into my ear in between, which I would like to her to share before we then open up to questions from the floor. Puan Sri, what did you quietly tell me just now?
I'm suggesting that green economy is not necessarily new industry. Even in my 50-year-old plant, I can still look at it and make it green. It's really about changing the mindset of looking at your business. It used to be business is about let's do good, let's make money, and we'll do good later. It's really flipping that and say, how can I do good and do well in the process? So in our business, our competitor also is challenging us to be green, because what is the reality with competition? There will be price erosion. I'm not going to tell how long I've been in the business. I've never seen the price of our product goes up. It has gone down, if anything else. And typically, as what the father of Kaizen says, that what does not create value to the customer is waste. So we look at waste. So having this big policy, strategy, has no meaning until that makes sense to the people on the ground. So how do you translate that message into something that people who are working on the ground, your workers, understand what it means? So for us, that is the communication of translating waste is cost, is profit. So that is a language that they understood. And having all these competitors keeping us on our toes makes us relook at how we do our business. Makes us look at where else can we reduce our waste. Is it overproduction? Is it over processing? So we look at 3 things. Is it the software, the people? Is it the hardware, the technology? Or is it the process? So we always look at these three, and more often than not, it is really the people that can really create value. So that's what but on the other thing, with that, you will also have to face, as what Pavel is saying, because like us, we want to recycle some of our waste, then we will have to come face to face with the authorities, because some of the legislation might not be up to date with what you want to do. So that's where you really have to engage and engage and engage and change the mindset of the authorities in reviewing that legislation.
All right, a lot of great points here. The point that was made by Pavel as well, we sometimes need to revise the regulatory framework to get the circular economy really going. And these comments came from a lady who is not just a board member of Malaysian Mosaic. She is as well the CSR director for Hapsang Consolidated, which is the parent group. And, you know, this is beyond CSR, and I think that links in nicely into the closing plenary, where that will be one of the themes. You know, it's really about the core business here, and it's about the people, and it's nothing new, and it makes business sense. So let's open the floor to comments or questions from you guys. We don't have the pigeonhole flying around this morning, so we can do straight, you know. We have two gentlemen here, Phil and Lawrence. Maybe you can walk to the mic there and kick off with your questions. Maybe you can briefly mention where you come from. Keep your questions or comments short and sharp.
Okay, thanks. Excuse me, Phil Reedy. I'm from Geosyntec Consultants. We're a US-based environmental engineering consulting company. So my question may be oriented towards Pavel more on the sort of pragmatic side. I really like the waste to energy model, but as I understand it, sort of not all waste is created equal, right? There's different sort of hierarchies of things that are more or less productive or useful in that process. So can you sort of break down some of the nuances of the waste stream that's sort of most productive or less productive, and how that affects the viability of that model?
Thank you very much, Phil. This is for a book, this is for a day's discussion. Waste to energy. Just let's think of the situation in this particular city. About 8,000 tons of waste going to a landfill every day. The average moisture content is between 60 and 70%, depending on whether it is a dry day or rainy day. The energetic value of the municipal waste you collect is very low. It's barely enough to evaporate the water you bring along with the waste. So how much electric power under these circumstances do you think you will extract out of a ton of municipal waste? In this context, you will still need to use some fossil fuels or some additional fuel to ensure a consistent combustion of that material, unless you start adding value and making SRF and stuff like that. So you would need to have either a massive improvement of the collection fee, which the government probably does not have a pocket deep enough to subsidize, or you would need an enormous feed-in tariff to basically cover the high operating cost. So that's for the standard waste to energy model. Then there are many other models, but I believe that really you need a proper system. If you do segregation of waste, you can do more recycling, you can extract better biomass, which you can either digest or compost, and you can make out of the non-recyclables alternative fuels for co-processing in a cement kiln, for example, and you can take the innards and use them as fillers in a construction site, for example. So again, it's very hard to put a scale on things. It always depends on the actual mix of waste, but one-fits-all solution is always a solution which is very, very compromised.
I just want to comment actually about this waste to energy and that you have pointed out. If we gonna follow the idea of circular economy in the biomass, let's say all the waste, it is usually preferable to convert the waste into biochemicals, biopolymers, but because they are highly value-adding products. Then we can extend it. Once it's not possible, maybe the next value would be the renewable, the biogas. And then if not, and then the next option would be to use it as a biochar, as an additive to the environment, actually, to grow the plants, actually. So in accordance to circular economy, the production of bioplastic is tighter, which means the value is higher compared with producing it like just for energy generation. And based on my experience also in the United States, particularly converting wood chips to bioplastics and ethanol, we found out that it's better to convert first into bioplastics, biopolymers, rather than really producing it to production of ethanol for, let's say, for aviation biofuel. So that's what we have found out in the United States.
Before we go to the next question, there are actually quite a couple of waste-to-energy plants in Germany, other parts of Europe, that have to be heavily subsidized because they were designed at a time when there was a much higher volume of waste occurring than it is now, and they've become financial liabilities rather than, useful tools for tackling waste. Another German question?
No, not really German, because I live here since more than 20 years. So I'm almost Filipino. So I'm Jürgen Lorenz from Pro Environment Consortium. So we heavily engaged in implementing proper recycling solutions. And my question is really, when I hear two words, waste to energy and landfilling, I become very suspicious. Because I think there is a problem with the mindsetting and priorities here, especially in developing countries. First, we push people towards building landfillings, and now we have a very strong discussion putting everything in one pot and build a big waste-to-energy plant. The question is that the right strategy? And I think we should look at the priorities, how and what plans we develop. And my suggestion, and maybe you give me a reply on that, is to build fully designed and professionally designed and operated recycling plants first, and follow also these priority approaches, what you mentioned here in the last.
Yes, yes.
You see, during my brief, whatever I have seen, I think there is nothing called waste. Actually, waste can be redefined as something which is to be used after a gap. The issue is that we have to be a little scientific in handling waste. Waste need not always lead to energy, but it can lead to many other things. We saw that small girl who made what out of waste. And in Foundry, from waste, we are making paver blocks. But a lot of innovative activities, the testing, and also a lot of technology comes into being because, what sort of waste is that? Where was it kept? How is it handled? Is it kept in water or in dry? What temperature it cool? And all those things. And then we have to come to the various solutions. And we need to note the origin of the waste. That is very important to give it a test. Thank you.
I tend to slightly disagree. Waste is a waste until it becomes something else. For as long as you waste it, it is waste. And not wasting it, again, takes efforts, takes creativity, takes a lot of upstream improvements, and takes money. So therefore we need to talk waste, and we should not shy away from calling it waste, because it is being wasted all the time. And when we stop wasting it, we'll call it product, we'll call it byproduct, we'll call it whatever else. But the moment we start telling people and authorities, hey, this is actually not waste, this is wealth, nothing will happen to it, because they'll be happy that they are not wasting. It's a philosophical question, but it is a human being, it is in human nature. So let's call it waste, and let's tackle the waste problem. And then we'll be skimming the cream in making a product and turning the waste into something better.
All right, further comments, further questions? Yes, the lady there, please let us know who you are.
I'm Lou Arsenio from the Archdiocese of Manila, a church institution. You know, in the Philippines, education institutions, especially private, are not subsidized by the government, unlike in other countries. So I would like to ask the panel, can any one of you give an example of a successful green educational institution that practice circular economy and that will also assure ROI on the soonest possible? Because you know, this always, as always, the mentality that investing on green technologies or green systems are quite expensive, especially in the Philippines. Thank you.
Sorry, which organizations were you referring to?
Archdiocese of Manila is a church, Catholic church institution.
Sorry?
Catholic church institution.
Ah, okay, okay. And you want to know such an institution
Yeah,
in
I would like,
example?
yeah, an education institution, educational institution, meaning schools, universities who are practicing circular economy by greening their system. If there's any, it would be very helpful to us. Thank you.
A very interesting question. Thanks for that question. So I don't know specifically here in the Philippines, but I'm sure that there are a few educational institutions, but usually at the university level. One is in Netherlands. The Leiden University is really advancing the idea of circular economy, where a lot of students are getting involved. They even think about, about the waste, the solid waste, the water waste. There are a lot of work ongoing in Netherlands in particular. Also, there are a lot of institutions in France, actually, where circular economy is also being enshrined, that hopefully they can reduce their food waste. So there are many, if in the context of Europe, there are a lot of research educational institutions. But maybe in the Asia-Pacific region, I would say, look on universities in China, because China has promulgated a law on circular economy where actually, it challenges all the different sectors in the economy, the educational research institutions, the public and the private, to instill actually the idea of circular economy. So I think you might explore Tsinghua University, which is also a leading research group in circular economy. So that's what I can suggest. Yeah.
Anthony, can I ask you a challenging question? As you have a lot of research going on in your university in the circular economy, is your university practicing the circular economy?
Yes, we do. We have actually a motto in University of Queensland. We want to pursue what they call the sustainable development. And I'm a part of the Global Change Institute. And actually, I propose a project which is funded by the Global Change Institute to pursue actually to adopt circular economy in the agri-food sector. And I have few research students working with me, and we are applying this in the case of the red meat industry. And actually I have also a Filipina actually who is currently based in Butuan City, where we are actually applying the idea of circular economy on how we can get value out of the tailings from the mining sector. So there are a lot of things happening at the University of Queensland, but also there are a lot of works at the University of Sydney as well as in the University of Melbourne. So those are the leading that are working in the circular economy.
The next question all the way from Paris, Gregory. Can you increase the sound on the microphone? Doesn't seem to be...
I can speak louder.
Good. Save electricity. Très bien.
Très bien. I would like to know what is, according to you, necessary to make these solutions exist in Asia, whether it's tax or investment flows and or whether it's regulations that would define a price for these different waste. What is necessary and what is your assumption about what is possible?
I'm happy to take that to start. I think that probably there's three things in my view that are absolutely essential. One of them is policy enforcement. I think many countries in Asia nowadays have amazing policies, but one thing, or even law enforcement. One thing is the policy, the other one is the actual implementation. That requires substantial political commitment as well. Second one is financing. I think we need to continue stepping up change and development of infrastructure where necessary. And the third one, I think, is education on the one hand. I wouldn't call it education, I would call it awareness, and making sure that in a lot of the areas where we're working, whether it's municipal or rural or whatever, it's, we actually make the citizens part of the solution. I think without them, it's not going to work, whether it's segregation and recycling of home waste, or whether it's in hospitals and so on. They all need to be part of the solution, or else it will not work. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I will agree with her, and I think, but for the last 30, 40 years, seeing different parts of Asia, I mean, frankly speaking, implementation of regulation, I don't think has improved a lot. Or I cannot be more frank politically. But what can be done is that the price of this thing can be reduced. What I am suggesting is that, as she suggested, if we can enhance the information gap, if we can, reduce the information gap, and simultaneously, if price plays a part in saying that you can save by doing better practices, which will be equivalent to agreeing to the existing laws, then those negative monies, I don't call it black, those negative monies will actually lose its value. There will be no taker for that, so therefore the price will come down. And this will be an iterative process, such that over a period of time, it will tend to zero. That's the thing which I can fill off.
And I would just add one thing. This was a question about Asia is always a little bit tricky, because Asia is not a homogeneous entity. And what is the practice in Pakistan might be completely wrong in the perception of reality in Japan, and in Southeast Asia it's different than in North Asia. Though mainly for the developing countries, one thing you can meet every time you start talking waste and working in the waste sector here is vested interests. And I guess vested interests are something what blocks everything else. There's an impact on regulations, there's an impact on applied technologies, there's an impact on applied methods, and so on and so forth. So rather than giving you an answer, what will make the change, I will tell you what is the biggest wall standing in front of us. And that's the vested interests of many different groups, lobbies, individuals, and so forth.
All right. Okay, one quick question, very quick, with a quick answer, and then a final round, a 1-minute statement from each of the panelists.
Hi, my name is Krija. I'm representing the academe, but also I'm part of a youth organization called Junior Chamber International. I guess you can also use this as an opportunity to wrap up already. For the past 3 days, I've been listening to everyone discuss, and we've all been listening to several technical discussions from different experts. You've mentioned that this is not a new industry and has been in existence for a number of years already. The whole greening has already started a few years back, and it's not just starting now. You also mentioned that proof of concept exists, even in big corporations, and policies are already existing, although there could be several improvements for implementation. And we've been trying to change the mindset of people through collaborations, education, and never-ending campaigns, awareness, raising awareness and all. I just want to ask, given all those things, where or what, where or who do you see as the problem, or where does the problem really lie? Anyone can
Yeah,
answer.
let's do a final round here with that in mind. How can we get the breakthrough in greening of industry, waste minimization, and more efficient resource use in terms of the circular economy? Every panelist can pick out their specific area that they would like to talk on. And can I do ladies first? Tatiana, can we start with you?
I think maybe a little bit on replying to your answer. I think I wouldn't call it the problem, but I think we all contribute to this. So there is two things. One is our consumption patterns, which need to be revisited. I think there's been I wouldn't say, a lot of advertisement, but there's been general policies that engage and promoted consumption. This was linked to growth and so on, and we need to manage it because, as we mentioned, resources are limited. As it was perfectly put in the video, some of them are only just causing a major problem, pollution, and thereafter probably it will end up affecting us. So I think one of the things is, managing consumption and consumption patterns. The second thing probably would be considering how to create things, managing depletion of resources. And I think a lot of it can come from the waste problem itself. And lastly, I think we also need to consider technology as a potential for solution, and not just a problem.
All right, Anthony, your words of wisdom.
Okay, a great question, actually. If I remember the words of Albert Einstein, it says that we cannot propose a solution at the level we created the problem. But the problem we had is that we proposed solution at the level we created the problem. So therefore, we need to think beyond the box, outside the box. And therefore, the solution should be systems approach, collaborative, and respect and understand the interconnectedness of the different issues rather than a silo approach. Because if we can pursue that approach actually to think beyond the box, as Albert Einstein clearly stated, I think we're on the right path for sustainable development.
Thank you. First of all, a clarification to Pavel. What I was actually trying to say is to look at your waste as a wealth and don't throw it during the night outside. So, firstly, how many of us have heard the disease called small vessel disease? Can you raise your hands, please? Okay, small vessel disease. No. How many of us have heard about heart attack? Yeah. So heart attack happens when the coronary, which is the main vein in the heart, gets blocked. But small vessel disease are the same small vessels which are in the heart, and when they get blocked, you get pain, which can lead to heart attack. So therefore, that's the importance of small. And if we cannot clean up our small, our big will only be brought back. That's what we say, that if you just ignore somebody, they will only pull you, gravitate you towards them. And with 50 to 100 million of them, that's a real issue. So I think we need to look at two issues, work with the industry associations, work with the service providers, identify them, create them, and work with the SMEs in that mode. And please look at our website. There are various methodologies which are available for that. Thank you.
I'll make it very, very simple. I'm from the private sector. We owe it to our shareholder to return their investment. So, two things. One, waste not, want not. Two, good, very, very basic. Yeah. So, plan, execute once.
Internalize the problem before you buy, before you want, before you throw. Think of what you can do. That's the individual level. That's about starting small. On the global level, we all have to understand and be vocal about that. We have overpopulated this planet. We are pest to this planet, if I take that in very, very rude way. And this pest glorifies endless growth. Just think about the economists who panic if they see that the growth rate of certain country, GDP, has slightly dropped, 0.1 percentage point drop. What are we going to do? Sheer panic. If we believe that only perpetual growth can sustain our life and our lifestyle and standard of living on this planet, we are doomed and we are heading for disaster. So economic models have to be changed as well as individual consumption pattern. Otherwise, there's a big problem. Thank you.
So thank you, Pavel. And I guess I've got the last word. For me, less is more. I'm building at the moment a carbon neutral tiny home that will have zero external electricity, zero external water, and zero waste as a concept. So maybe that's my contribution to solving the overall resource efficiency and waste problem. And Salamat po, thank you. And thanks to all of you for your great participation, and thanks to a very exciting and excellent panel. Thank you. Sensible, solid.